Good evening. Will the members and our guests please take their seats? This meeting will now come to order. As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the April meeting of the Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. Pardon me? Yeah. All right. We have a special announcement tonight. I'd like to introduce Lisa Weicker and Rob Hull, children of Lloyd Hull, longtime member who died last year. Rob Hull and Lisa Weicker.
Hello, thank you. I'm Rob Hull, and as he said, this is my sister Lisa. We're two of Lloyd Hull's three children. Missing tonight is our... How's that, better? Okay. We'll start that over. Okay. I'm Rob Hull, and this is my sister Lisa, and we're two of Lloyd Hull's three children. Our sister Victoria is not with us tonight. She's the third. Our dad was a long-standing member here, 41 years of his life, and he's very proud of the RTM. He was an ardent patriot, loved his family, loved his town, and he loved music. In trying to find a way to honor him, we realized that music was the perfect solution. What better way to bring people together, the thing he liked the most? Our sister Victoria is chairperson for the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and she's the mastermind of this idea. Next week, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, one of the world's finest, will give a concert, one night only, at the Palace Theater in Stamford in honor of Dad. Some of the proceeds will go to the Greenwich-based Young Artist Philharmonic. Lise?
We feel that this accurately reflects his desire to help others, especially young people, and his community, and his love for music. He felt that somehow this would bring people together. It is also bringing something very, very special to our community. We hope that you might think about attending this amazing event next Tuesday. There are a variety of different ticket availabilities. As a sponsor or a gala member, you can attend and have dinner, cocktails, and a light dessert with opportunities to meet members of the orchestra. There are also general admission tickets starting at $35 with special rates of $15 for young students. There are flyers that look like this that we'll leave available on the table outside. It should be an amazing evening and a really fine tribute to our father. If you want more information, they're the brochures, or you can go to the websites of the Palace Theater in Stamford or the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alexis Vulgaris, chair of our Special Moderators Committee on RTM Governance.
Good evening. So I just wanted to give you all a little update on what we're doing in governance. We're hoping to wrap up our work in June, but as we're getting closer to the finish line, I thought everybody might want to hear what we're doing. So we've concentrated our efforts in a variety of content areas or broad themes based on the feedback we received. Communication, technology, RTM education, process. We tend to be a very methodical and slow group. We've met 23 times, roughly every 3 weeks for the last 15 or 16 months. And we feel that we're going to be offering some practical suggestions that should increase the efficiency of the RTM while also preserving its current structure. So, spoiler alert, the governance committee is probably not going to be offering radical recommendations for change. Things like redistricting, increasing or decreasing the size of the RTM, imposing term limits, big, huge structural changes were extensively debated and discussed by the committee, but we purposefully took a more deliberate approach that allowed us to introduce options for change while largely keeping the current system intact. The feeling was make targeted changes where it made the most sense, see if those changes address the problems identified, and hopefully result in greater RTM efficiency before recommending a sweeping change that might have some unintended consequence. So what are some of the things you can expect from us? So and this is not the definitive list, I'm just giving you examples. Some examples are, we looked at the Greenwich League of Women Voters study that they did, and we pulled out 3 suggestions that we thought were very good and practical. So one of them was increasing the appropriation threshold from $5,000 to $25,000, eliminate, and I know this is going to upset some people, the thumbs up, thumbs down method of casting a vote at the full RTM meeting, and require all RTM members to use a town-issued email address, which I know is something that technology is also working on. Other things, ordinances were a big part of what we looked at, so require a second reading of all resolutions that are brought to the RTM to amend the charter, to enact ordinances, or to amend the rules. And another one that we're thinking of, or that we'd like to recommend, is any subcommittee that's formed to study a proposed ordinance have a minimum of 5 members. I think you'll all remember that the fracking subcommittee was doing a lot of work with 2 people, so we thought that making any subcommittee bigger would be better. So those are some of the things. There are more. When we produce our final report and submit that report to the moderator, we will provide an explanation for why we are recommending each suggestion, as well as a reason why we did not take up other suggestions. I just want to acknowledge the fine work of TAG. We've enjoyed working closely and collaboratively with them this year, and many of the technologies suggestions that we received, we referred to them. They are working on, and they will likely continue to work on those after GovCom completes its work. I would especially like to thank Liz Perry out of District 7 and Andrea Anthony, who sits with me on Health and Human Services. Andrea's been projecting the College Month, and Liz did a lot of work with website workshops, as well as Bob Brady and Jenny Baird for organizing the committee and identifying the key initiatives that make the most sense to work on. You've probably also heard us talk about the best practices manual that we're working on. We hope to have a lot of the suggestions that we received funneled into that. We've also very quietly been implementing some protocol rollouts. For example, there were questions about how to fill a district vacancy, so we've kind of taken it upon ourselves to do something different. When a district vacancy happens and an interim election has to be held, we're doing much more in terms of outreach. So we have the RTM Newsflash section on the website announce it. We've been putting it on the Greenwich Free Press and a lot of the free newspapers. We've asked WGCH to do on-air, community service announcements. So this is all being done in addition to the work that the district chairs are doing to promote the opening. And finally, we invited members from the Appointments Committee to our February meeting to discuss the candidate nomination process and the master list that they've created. And we just wanted to read a statement on behalf of our committee supporting the work that they've done. So this is on behalf of the Governance Committee. Whereas the Appointments Committee has greatly improved the record keeping and organization of nominations to be reviewed by the RTM for various boards and commissions, now therefore it is the sense of the Special Committee on RTM Governance that we encourage all relevant town departments to work together to adopt this sustainable process to track and promote appointments. They've really done some remarkable work in trying to keep that list going, and now we just have to find the right group of people and home to house the list. So we hope to work with them and help that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As all members have received a copy of the minutes of our March 11 meeting, the reading of the minutes will be omitted. Are there any proposed changes to those minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes as submitted stand adopted upon unanimous consent. I notified our district and committee chairs on Saturday that based upon the reports received, I would recommend that tonight we place on our consent calendar items 1 and 4 and take all the remaining items up separately, but not in numerical order as we usually do, but to take them in reverse order. So after we dispose of the consent calendar items, I'll then take up item 6. Has item 5 been withdrawn? Item 5 has been withdrawn. So we'll take up item 6 and then item 3 and item 2. The tolling sense of the meeting resolution will be the final item that we take up. With respect to that, hopefully everyone is aware we have sign-up sheets for item number 2. They are, as you walk in to the hall, there is a sheet up here. I suggest if you would like to speak, that you get your name on that list, and I will do the best I can to protect your right to address us tonight. All right, at this time, I will designate the following 2 items for our consent calendar. If they remain on that consent calendar, this is the only thing you will hear tonight, as we do not get committee reports or hear discussion on consent calendar items. Item number 1 is a resolution appointing Aris Christ to be a member of the Historic District Commission with a term expiring October 31, 2023, and the term would begin upon appointment. Item number 4 is a resolution appointing Lyle Gibbons to be a member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term beginning upon appointment and expiring March 31, 2022. Are there any objections to those items being placed on our consent calendar? Hearing none, will our district chairs please mark your voting cards, consent calendar items 1 and 4, and proceed to poll your delegation. Item 6 now comes before us. Peter Tessie, our first selectman.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. Item number 6, resolve that the following named person renominated by the Board of Selectmen be appointed an alternate member of the Historic District Commission, position A1, for a term beginning upon appointment and expiring October 31st, 2023. Anna Maria McGinnis.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 6 has been moved and seconded. May we have the reports of the committees that took this up? Peter Berg, Chair of our Land Use Committee.
Evening, Mr. Moderator. Ms. McGinnis was unable to come to the Land Use Committee meeting last. How about now? So Ms. McGinnis was unable to attend the Land Use Committee meeting last Monday evening. She had to be in New York City. We didn't actually move to postpone.
So why don't you do it?
So I'll move to postpone until June.
All right, is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to postpone item 6 to our June meeting. All those in favor of postponing item 6 to our June meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to postpone has carried. Thank you. Item 3 now comes before us. May we have that resolution? Peter Tessie, our first selectman.
Item number 3, to consider and act upon the following resolution requested by Commission on Aging and approved by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Estimate and Taxation. RTM resolution extending and amending Greenwich Municipal Code Chapter 12 Taxation Article 1 Property Tax Exemption Section 12-61 Property Tax Relief for Seniors and Permanently Totally Disabled. Now therefore be it hereby ordained and enacted by the representative town meeting that the ordinance entitled Chapter 12 Taxation Article 1 Property Tax Exemptions Section 12-6 1. Property tax relief for seniors is hereby amended and is attached as follows.
Same as it appears on the call. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 3 has been moved and seconded. Alexis Vulgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. Last Tuesday, Health and Human Services met with Lori Contadino, Executive Director of the Commission on Aging, who walked us through this item. The Senior Tax Relief Ordinance was initially enacted in 2000 in order to reduce the property tax burden of Greenwich taxpayers 65 years or older living on a low fixed income so they could age in place at home. The current ordinance has a 5-year sunset clause, which will cease to be effective June 30th, 2019, unless renewed by the RTM. The renewal will be for an additional 5-year period, extending the ordinance from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2024. As an age-friendly community, it's important that for seniors and disabled homeowners living on tight budgets with low income levels, that we make it affordable for them to live at home for as long as possible. These are longtime Greenwich residents who want to age in place in their home and in the town they have raised their families in and where they have social support networks. It's also far less expensive for them to age in their home as opposed to going to an institution. So some basic facts about this ordinance. The program is capped using a formula as outlined in the ordinance itself, for which the 2018-19 budget is about $900,000. That's the maximum allocated amount for the program has not been reached in the last 5 years. In 2017, there were 516 taxpayers which qualified for the program, and they only used about $755,000 in tax credits. Who's eligible for the program? So the property, if you are eligible, you have to be 65 or older, and the real property is the resident's principal residence. You have to be a taxpayer for at least 1 year. Your total income cannot exceed $68,000, and the value of your home, using the 2017 grand list data, can be valued at more than $1.327 million. The revised ordinance, or the renewal of the ordinance, has a couple of substantial changes. So, as you've heard, adding residents with permanent total disability, I believe they anticipate 2 residents meeting that criteria. Adding real property held in trust for the residents' benefit, and this is important because many older adults and people with permanent total disabilities have their residents held in trust for estate and benefit planning purposes. And then the last big substantial item was modifying qualifying income and tax credit charts. The current ordinance has a chart showing the amounts of income that will qualify for tax credits and the amount of the tax credit. And currently there are 4 qualifying brackets, and that number is being expanded to 7. The Commission on Aging has worked with the tax collector to take a proactive approach to publicizing this benefit, and most eligible residents should have received in their tax bill, it was like a blue flyer, a slip of paper, indicating that this is an option. However, as Ellen Murdoch from District 12 HHS delegate pointed out, for those residents who pay their taxes from an escrow account, they might not be aware of that benefit because the bill's not going to their home. So both Lori Contadino and Howard Richman are aware of this, and they will work to identify alternative ways to broadcast this benefit so additional seniors or people with total disability can take advantage of it. Our vote was 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Basham, Vice Chair of our Finance Committee.
Good evening. Lori Contadino presented to us on Monday evening, and all of the information you got from Alexis, she presented to us. We voted 12-0-0 to confirm.
Thank you. Doug Wells, Chair of the Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, we took up the item last Monday evening, and we have nothing to add except for the fact that we noted one mistake in the chart. If you look at page 5 on the call, you'll see there are 2 columns there for qualifying total annual income with the original 4 quadrants, and then underneath that is the 7 quadrants. we noticed that while there is a property tax credit for those who have income of less than $27,000 in both cases, there is a little bit of a glitch, because on the offhand chance that somebody came in with exactly $27,000 worth of income, you wouldn't know whether to give them the credit for $2,300 or $1,900. So we made that one correction to change line 2 in each of those graphs from $27,001 to $27,000. So in each of those two places, it'll read from $27,000 to $40,500, and then in the lower quadrant from $27,000 to $33,500. Our vote as revised was 12-0-0.
All right, so why don't you make that motion now?
I so move to change the number from $27,000, from $27,001 to $27,000 in each of those two places.
All right, that motion being made on behalf of one of our committees does not require a second. We can adopt motions to amend upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to that amendment? Hearing none, that Legislative and Rules Committee motion to amend is adopted upon unanimous consent. Discussion on item 3. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards, item number 3, and proceed to poll your delegation. Item number 2 now comes before us. Laura Gladstone, do you have that? And the sign-up sheets are going to be brought forward. Is Laura Gladstone here? We are waiting for item number 2 to be presented. Laura Gladstone. I have the result of the vote on our consent calendar items 1 and 4, both appointments. Those in favor, 193, opposed 0, abstaining 1. The consent calendar items have carried. Laura Gladstone.
Hi. We actually have someone who's going to come speak tonight, so I was wondering and he is in Stamford, and I was wondering if...
Well, all we're doing is getting it before us. If you could...
All we're doing is what? Sorry?
Just say this is the same as appears on the call.
Oh, this is the same as appears on the call.
We're going to hear committee reports before we get into
sorry.
discussion.
Got it.
So
Okay,
you are placing before us the
Got
sense
it.
of the meeting resolution that appears as item number 2, which asks the RTM to opine that it is opposed to the imposition of tolls. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
All right. Will the member please move the adoption of the sense of the meeting resolution? Resolution on item 2 has been moved and seconded. May we have the reports of our committees that considered this? Who would like to begin? Peter Berg with the Land Use Committee report.
Good evening again. The Land Use Committee met last Monday jointly with Legislative and Rules, Public Works, Transportation, and Finance. The proponents who were there were Laura Gladstone, Greenwich resident, and she is the petition initiator. Patrick Sasser, a Stamford resident, a full-time Stamford firefighter, a small business owner and founder of No Tolls Connecticut. Fred Camillo, Greenwich resident, state representative, representing our 151st district. And George Logan, state senator, representing Ansonia, Beacon Falls, Bethany, Derby, Hamden, Naugatuck, and Woodbridge. The opponent was Joseph McGee, Vice President of Public Policy and Programs for the Fairfield Business Council. You may know that as SACIA, based in Stamford. Its members are businesses and organizations with 30,000 employees. The Business Council mobilizes Fairfield County's business, political, and community leadership around issues critical to the region's viability as a business location. We also heard from Alexandra Bergstein, state senator representing Greenwich, Stamford, and New Canaan. The proponents made 11 points. First, that residents of Greenwich already pay more in taxes and fees than most residents in the country. Second, Connecticut has the 7th highest tax on gasoline. 3, tolls will divert cars onto local roads to avoid paying, which will double or triple congestion and maintenance costs. 4, Massachusetts is having trouble collecting tolls from out-of-state drivers who don't have Easy Pass transponders. 5, tolls are taxes because commuters don't have a choice. 6, toll revenue will be spent upstate, not in Fairfield County. 7, businesses will pass on the tolls to customers, raising everyone's cost of living. 8, New England Oil of Greenwich estimates it will pay $55,000 to $70,000 a year in tolls. 9, the state has funded highway projects through 2022. 10, small business owners don't want tolls. And 11, with tolls, residents won't be able to afford to go on vacations. The proponent said 10 things. First, Fairfield Business Council used to oppose tolls. Now it supports tolls. Quote, a confident people invests in their future. 2, Connecticut suffers from slow business growth and slow population growth. Only Wyoming and North Dakota have slower growth. 3, Connecticut businesses can't fill jobs due to problems with transportation. Workers can't get to jobs. 4, avoiding tolls is overstated. Is an 18-wheeler going, this is a quote, is an 18-wheeler going to get off I-95 to save 25 cents? 5, improvements to rail and highway are necessary in order to grow the state. 6, tolls will be paid 40% by residents of other states. Quote, it's time they paid their fair share. Bonding will cost Connecticut residents 100%. Connecticut has the highest bonded debt in the nation. Quote, the state has put everything on the state's credit card. 7, the Federal Highway Administration requires that toll revenue be used exclusively for the highways. 8, the need to upgrade our transportation infrastructure is urgent. Connecticut has 4 rail bridges over 100 years old. Quote, you'd think we learned a lesson from the Myannis Bridge collapse, but we have not. 9, the cost of congestion is $1,200 per person per year in increased fuel cost and lost time. Our congestion on I-95 is one of the highest ratios of lost hours, 50 hours a year of people being late to work. And finally, number 10, by 2023, there will be a deficit in the transportation fund. The land use vote on item 2 was 4 in favor, 7 opposed, and District 10 absent on the resolution as it appears on the call. The no votes were Districts 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. The no votes expressed concern that they did not have enough information on the tolls and what they were voting for or against. And several felt that tolls offered a solution statewide to provide much needed dollars for transportation, infrastructure, repairs, and maintenance. Other states have tolls and many of us use them and pay their tolls. A member of the Land Use Committee proposed a second motion. Are you in favor of tolls in Connecticut? Our vote on that motion was 3 in favor, 5 opposed, and 3 abstentions. District 10 absent. Districts 1, 2, 5, 7, and 12 voted no. The noes expressed concerns about increased congestion in town and whether toll funds will be spent efficiently.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Arlene Lamazzo, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
The Public Works Committee met last week.
I think you got to bring that closer if you can.
Sorry. Public Works Committee met last week on April 1st, and as Peter told you, we met in joint session with Land Use and Legislative and Rules Transportation, and for 1.5 hours, questions were asked and answered. We had at our meeting, RTM guests, Laura Costin from District 8, and who is a member of the BOC, and Janet McMahon from District 8. Guests on behalf of the proponents, that is those who do not want tolls, Laura Gladstone, the resident, Fred Camillo, from State Rep from 151, Patrick Sasser, who's a small business owner, who is a no tolls founder, and State Senator George Logan. Guests who are opposed to the resolution, those who want the tolls, were Joseph McGee, who's Vice President of Fairfield Business Council, and State Senator Alex Bergstein, from who represents the District 36. The audience asked all the questions that you just heard about, and most were answered by Mrs. Gladstone and Senator George Logan, and Mr. McGee, of course, answered most of the questions which targeted the need for tolls. We adjourned to the Mazza room to continue the meeting. I will not go over all the things that you heard from Peter. We discussed everything he said and probably less than he said. Our vote was 9 in favor of the resolution. That is, those who wanted, to oppose tolls. 1 who voted no, because she's from District 8. She wanted out-of-state users, especially those large trucks. She feels that those users should pay for the tolls, should pay their share of the costs by contributing tolls. District 6 member voted to abstain because felt much more information should be investigated so that we really had real facts and not just opinions, and that there would be more discussion. Our vote was 9-1-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Bates with the Transportation Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Transportation Committee met after the joint meeting that you've heard well summarized previously. Our vote in the Transportation Committee was 6 in favor of the resolution, 4 opposed, Districts 2, 4, 5, and 8 for reasons previously expressed, and Districts 7 and 12 were absent.
Thank you. Mike Basham with the report of our Finance Committee.
Thank you. This resolution was not actually referred to the Finance Committee, but we did vote overwhelmingly to attend the joint meeting of the 4 committees on Monday evening. We listened to all the arguments. We went back to our room and met, and we discussed the issue of the 19 members and alternates that were there. We went around the room. Everybody gave their respective positions. For what it's worth, there were 14 opposed, in favor of the resolution, 5 opposed. When we actually came to a vote, the vote was 9-3. The 9 up in favor of the resolution expressed a great deal of skepticism about the ability of Hartford to actually divert these revenues to what they say they're going to use them for. The 3 people that were opposed felt that we really do need the money for the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Our committee heard from the speakers that has been discussed already, and then went to our own committee room to discuss it further. Many people in our committee had serious misgivings about voting on this issue for a number of reasons, primarily because we have apparently at least 3 different proposals before the legislature at this point. We don't know exactly what it is that we are supposed to be opposed to just yet. And we also think that we, as RTM members, are elected to address town issues, not state issues. And so our vote on this issue probably reflects not necessarily that people are either for or against tolls. Obviously, everybody doesn't want tolls. It's whether or not this body should be considering this on such limited information at this point. The vote to approve item 2 was voted down by a vote of 5 in favor, 7 opposed, with districts 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 12 voting no.
Thank you. At this point, we will get into discussion on item 2. I can tell you that we have in excess of 40 people. For what purpose do you rise? I'm not there yet. We have an excess of 40 people who have signed up, and others have indicated they want to speak who have not signed up. So is there a motion to limit debate? Mr. Tudhill, what are the terms? Mr. Tudhill, would you mind coming forward, please? Or should I just assume it's your normal motion? All right, Mr. Tudhill, I will verbalize what I believe you are moving, and you can confirm this. You are moving that we limit debate to allow 10 minutes for the proponent or designee, 10 minutes for a principal opponent, the latter to be determined by the moderator, and all other speakers 3 minutes per motion that comes up on this. Is that correct? Mr. Tudhill, we went through this once before. There could be several motions on this. So you are saying per motion, correct? All right. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to limit debate on item number 2 as follows. The proponent will be allowed 10 minutes. A principal opponent, also 10 minutes. They will speak at the beginning. And all others will be limited to 3 minutes. The motion to limit debate is not itself debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. All those in favor of Mr. Tudhill's motion to limit debate, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion has carried. So that limit is in effect. And as many members have urged me to remind our speakers that they do not have to speak for the full time that they are allotted. They can adopt points previously made. And please understand, 3 minutes times 50 is a long time. All right. Laura Gladstone, you are the proponent. Did you want to designate someone to use that? All right. Could you tell us who that is, please? And have that person come forward.
Hi, I'd like to designate the 10 minutes to State Senator George Logan from Ansonia.
Good evening. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm State Senator George Logan from Ansonia. How's that? A little better? There you go. Let's see here.
No. We're gonna let the proponent and principal opponent speak, and then I'll recognize you.
Great. So good evening, Greenwich Representative Town Committee members. I am George Logan. As you heard, I live in Ansonia. I live there with my wife, Lisa, who's a registered nurse for the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, my 2 children, Hunter, who's a sophomore at Emerson College in Boston, and my daughter, Tracy, who's a senior at St. Joe's in Trumbull. I was born in and grew up in the inner city of New Haven. I attended Notre Dame High School in West Haven and attended Trinity College in Hartford, where I earned a degree in engineering and later a master's degree. Currently, I work as an executive for a water company, and I'm in my second term as a Connecticut State Senator, serving on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, Regulations Review Committee, Human Services Committee, and Veterans Committee. Last year, I served as co-chair of Planning and Development Committee and as a member of Public Health and Education. I was asked to help out with the sense of the meeting resolution, the SOMR, by the person who submitted the SOMR in opposition of tolling in Connecticut, Laura Gladstone, and RTM member Kimberly Salib. Over the last week, I've had the pleasure of visiting Greenwich RTM committees and districts, as well as speaking with Greenwich residents about the implementation of tolling in Connecticut. Most of the people I spoke to in the town of Greenwich over the last month are against tolling in Connecticut, which is similar to the overall sentiment I have heard throughout Connecticut this year. Since the end of February of this year, many other communities have expressed their opposition to tolling by way of passing similar resolutions as the one before you today. These committees include Enfield, Sherman, Stamford, Trumbull, Montville, Suffield, Vernon, Lisbon, Shelton, and Wolcott. Even today, I attended a Connecticut Black Clergy Alliance event at the state capitol. The membership of the Connecticut Black Clergy Alliance provides spiritual guidance and community service to people in every urban area and many suburban areas in Connecticut. The Black Clergy Alliance emphatically expressed their opposition to tolling in Connecticut directly to Governor Ned Lamont, who was at the event, and made it clear that it is one of their top legislative priorities because they believe, as well as I do, that tolling in Connecticut will have a dramatic impact by making Connecticut even less affordable for families and individuals, including seniors of medium and low income. Many of the proposed tolling gantries are planned in and around the major urban areas as part of the congestion pricing component of the proposed tolling plans. The people most affected by tolls, the most vulnerable people in our state, children and seniors, people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, need your help to stop tolling from coming back to Connecticut. Tolling will increase not only the cost for Connecticut commuters traveling to and from work, tolling in Connecticut will affect everyone living in our state. The cost of services and goods such as groceries and other basic living essentials will cost more because of tolling, as trucking companies and local businesses will have to pass on the additional costs to the consumer. And there is no practical way to provide a discount to the economically disadvantaged people of Connecticut to counter the increased cost of living that would go along with tolling in Connecticut. Locally, here in the town of Greenwich, we have to be very concerned about a number of specific issues related to safety and the environment. Tolling in Connecticut will directly affect the residents of Greenwich as people come off the highway and use your local roads. Greenwich is the southernmost part of the state. This town will become the gateway for people traveling into Connecticut. We can expect increased traffic in most districts in Greenwich. People in economically challenged communities in Greenwich, where streets will be even more congested with traffic during rush hour, where children walk to their school bus stops, will end up bearing the negative consequences of tolling most. From increased pollution that children and others in this community will breathe, to the additional safety issues related to increased traffic. We will place more burden on your police force, and increased traffic will place more burden on your firemen who are already spread thin. As RTM members, protection and safety of Greenwich residents should be paramount, especially for your children. Some are concerned that out-of-state drivers who currently use our roads every day are using them for free. As a legislator, I can tell you, nothing is for free. As a result of a deal we made with the federal government in the 1980s to remove tolls, Connecticut receives almost double the amount from the federal government gas tax for Connecticut transportation needs when compared to other states around us, such as New York and Massachusetts. Bringing back tolling in Connecticut would put those federal dollars for transportation at risk, and that's a fact. With Connecticut facing payback obligations to the federal government of potentially over $100 million. Earlier, I mentioned the increased costs from goods and services as trucking companies and local businesses will have to pass on these additional costs to consumers. This includes everything from the cost of milk to healthcare services. Imagine every single healthcare provider and hospital will have to increase their costs to make up for their travel time for their administrators and health professionals. It will make life even more unaffordable for Greenwich residents. No discounts will be given for the increased cost of goods to low-income people. And this is another cost of living increase where people on fixed income will suffer the most. I will give you a personal example. My mother. My mother is so worried about tolls and the increased cost of living in Connecticut that she, in the kindness of her heart, due to an unfortunate situation having to do with a friend of the family who had an infant son, she is now being asked by the Department of Children and Families to consider being a foster parent for this tiny girl's niece, less than 1 year old, because her mother got caught in the drug trade. And the only person that she had in this entire state was my mother, because she came by and visited her often. My mother, her name is Olga, is hesitant to do it, to be a foster mom. And my mom is 80 years old. The kind of state that we're in here, right? Because she's afraid that the increased cost of living from tolls will not let her live within her means as is. And that's without even the foster child coming on board. Imagine, people are already being negatively incentivized to provide charitable and kind actions because of the fear of bringing tolling back to Connecticut. And my mother is not the only example. I would like, as Greenwich residents, for you to consider all that you provide to the rest of the state in the form of jobs. Many people I know, teachers, firefighters, police, etc., travel long distances for the job that they love in Greenwich. Many people cannot afford to live in Greenwich, or they would. As we know, commuting is not typically pleasurable. And to double tax them as they come to work for congestion pricing will force many to either quit their jobs or find alternate routes to work using local roads. I have spoken to many folks who have had a hard time paying for gas. I know it's hard for many of us to relate to this, but having a hard time paying for gas just to get to and from work every day. During my time working on the tolls issue, I have heard a lot from teachers who teach in other areas and have to commute. They will not be eligible.
2 minutes remaining, Senator.
How much time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you for that. I've heard from a lot of teachers who teach in other areas and have to commute. They will not be eligible for any additional discounts. Another $1,000, $2,000 or more a year. That's costly for folks. It's a significant amount of money for a teacher, a municipal worker, a dental hygienist, a domestic worker who comes to your home every day and is probably considered one of your family. I'll go back to the example of my mother. My mother and one of my aunts, who in the 1960s came to the U.S. as immigrants from Guatemala. I know there aren't many people of African descent in Guatemala, but there are some. Were fortunate enough to find their first jobs as domestic workers here in Connecticut. Today's low-income workers will be hit hard by the increased travel costs with tolls to go to and from work and to live in Connecticut every day. And I know Greenwich residents don't want to be seen as turning their backs on the rest of our state. So now that we went over why people are against tolls, why should you as Greenwich residents vote for the SOMAR today and not postpone it? There are many reasons why. The 3 bills that have passed the Transportation Committee, all 3 have tolls. All 3 include the implementation of tolls in Connecticut that will be as low as approximately 50 and as high as 80 tolling gantries throughout Connecticut, making us the most toll state in the nation. Also, once these bills are voted on, there will be no going back. They will be voted on next month, so now's the time to act. You will not have time to revisit this issue. Your voice in Greenwich is very, very important. I cannot underestimate to you how important it is, how much of a signal it will send to Hartford. People in Hartford listen to you. It's okay to tell your elected officials you don't agree on 1 or 2 issues, and then go back and find a more creative approach that is not a regressive tax to the people struggling the most. So
Thank
in
you very
closing,
much.
I am asking that you please consider voting for the SOMAR. Thank you very much for
thank
your
you very
time.
much.
Much appreciated.
All right. The principal opponent, Stephen Meskers, State Representative and District 6 member.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, and guests. My name is Stephen Meskers. I'm an RTM member from District 6. I'm also one of your elected representatives to the House in Hartford. And I want to take a few moments to speak to you about this sense of the meeting resolution. My background includes 35 years on Wall Street in the fixed income markets. Prior to taking my oath of office, I had a meeting with S&P and Fitch rating agencies to understand Connecticut's fiscal health. Unsurprisingly, both agencies were alarmed about our debt levels and our unfunded pension costs. Both Republicans and Democrats in Hartford are concerned about the very poor state of our infrastructure in Connecticut. To bring our roads and rails to an acceptable standard, a minimum of $65 billion needs to be invested over the next 30 years. That equates to roughly $2 billion of spending annually on our failing infrastructure, which includes the roads, the bridges, and the mass transit. This figure of $65 billion comes from the Republican Prioritized Progress Plan. In order to pay for this expenditure of $65 billion, the plan calls for borrowing $750 million annually in general obligation bonds to cover these needed expenditures. So over 10 years, that adds $7.5 billion to our debt balance, and over 30 years, roughly $22 billion in additional debt, with no other source of repayment but from you, the taxpayer. This added debt burden will jeopardize our credit rating and scare off many private sector investors in our state. Now that we've finally begun to address our pension obligations, let's not add more debt to the mix. I think Governor Lamont's call for a debt diet makes good sense. Without tolling, we face a serious funding shortfall to address our infrastructure problems. What's worse is that this alternative plan that is being aggressively promoted is a call to promote still more money. I am deeply concerned about the additional tax burden we will incur if we pay for this proposal. It'll add $22 billion of borrowed money, and that debt burden will fall heavily on all of our residents, and specifically on those I am elected to represent. I ask you to vote against this sense of the meeting resolution. Let's consider smart 21st century tolling. Let's rebuild Connecticut's infrastructure and share the burden of fixing our roads with all the out-of-state travelers who currently travel for free through our highway system. We are not in a position to turn down $300 million in out-of-state revenue to fix our infrastructure. We need to maintain a sound financial footing and to signal to the business community that we are addressing our transportation problems in a financially prudent manner. Please vote no. It is disappointing to see one of the most serious issues facing our state, how we will finance the necessary upgrades to our infrastructure, turn into what appears to be a partisan fight. I feel both indebted and responsible to all my constituents. That is why I decided to speak out against this SOMAR. As your representative, my door is always open, and I pledge to continue to do my best for all the residents of the town. Thank you.
All right. 10 minutes boiled down to 4 minutes. I like that. All right, Lucy Krasner, District 5.
Good evening, fellow members and the moderator. I'm Lucy Krasnor, District 5. I have been on the RTM for 41 years. When I saw... Thank you. When I saw this SOMR on the call, I was completely surprised and immediately called our moderator to say this seemed like an issue that should not be on the call, dealt with things that were not municipally based, and I wondered how it got on the call. And he indicated to me that he had to put it on the call because it came from 20 registered voters. However, I really, truly am upset about this. I do not think we want to start putting state and federal issues regarding legislation on the call. This SOMR involves highly charged political issue before our state legislature. Our RTM has been nonpartisan, and I hope it can remain nonpartisan. I have valued the nonpartisan nature of our body and the way we are able to tackle issues concerning Greenwich in a nonpartisan manner. We have enough of those to fill our plates in many important issues coming up. Are we really going to start having SOMRs on issues that affect people on matters that do not really revolve in strictly municipal basis? At one of the district meetings, a proponent stated that she didn't like tolls, but then began speaking about other things. She didn't like family leave matter, paid family leave either. So I'm wondering, will that be next month's SOMR? What about SOMRs on gun legislation, abortion, early voting? Where will it end? I think that the RTM should deal with important matters dealing with our town. We already spend a great deal of time on these matters, and some of them get rushed through with not enough time on them. I don't think we should discuss federal and state issues. The SOMR seeks to tell our state legislators what Greenwich thinks. However, we have not had public forums, educational meetings about this matter. The things in Hartford on tolling really aren't finalized, so I don't think it's appropriate to start voting on this. Some state legislators ran on the tolling issue. This SOMR is an end run around them. If you don't like tolls, call your representatives and let them know what you think. We should not be wading into a divisive process.
30 seconds.
Where we already have a process in place with dealing with them. It'll be bad and partisan for the RTM. Call your state representatives and let them know how you feel. It should not be handled here. Therefore, Mr. Moderator, I'm making a motion to postpone item 2 indefinitely.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to postpone item 2 indefinitely. Let me read you so we know what this motion is about. Motion to postpone indefinitely is a motion that the Assembly decline to take a position on the main question. Its adoption kills the main motion. The practical effect of a motion to postpone indefinitely is that those who, when I call for the vote on this, those who are against item 2 as it appears on the call will be voting yes. Those in favor of item 2 on the call will be voting no. So it flips yeses and nos when we come to the vote. It is a debatable motion, and debate may go into the merits. And everyone should understand, if this motion is adopted, item 2 will have been disposed of. So if you wanted to speak on this, now is the time to speak on this motion to postpone indefinitely. I will assume everyone who signed up intends to speak on this motion. We will start with Candace Garthwaite. I remind all our speakers, we have a 3-minute limit in effect, to be followed by Laura Costin. Candace Garthwaite, District 6. The motion to postpone indefinitely is now before us, but debate on that motion may go into the merits of the sense of the meeting resolution on item 2. Candace, excuse me, I answered your question. Candace Garthwaite.
Good evening. I support the motion to postpone item number 2 indefinitely. I agree with Lucy Krasnor that we have important municipal business to attend to, and that this could just set a precedent that would involve us in a lot of angst going forward. I do believe that it makes sense. It is obviously a very emotional and political issue. It does make sense to have local hearings. We should really get the facts on this topic. I don't think we have all the facts digested properly, and it's very important. Certainly there are issues, with how to manage protecting some of our more vulnerable residents in the state. I hear that, but I also believe that we have to be very attentive to the problem. Don't get distracted from the problem. The problem is the infrastructure problem. It is in severe disrepair. Safety is an issue at this point. And if we ignore this problem, then we do have a very big safety issue, and we are going to continue an economic slide in the state of Connecticut. So I urge you to vote yes to postpone this item indefinitely. Thank you.
Laura Costin, to be followed by Frank Farraker. I'd ask that we hold the applause so that we can move this along. And I ask our following speakers to be sitting down here ready to get up as soon as the prior speaker finishes. Laura Costin.
Good evening. I am Laura Costin from District 8. I am rising to speak in favor of this motion to postpone indefinitely. It is clear to me that this is a highly charged issue. It is also clear to me that this resolution is not scientific. It does not solve a problem. And if I may, I take issue with some of the information that has been circulated telling this body what a vote against the SOMR is, that it is a vote against working families. That's not what this is. Voting no on this SOMR is voting against a non-binding resolution, one that is aimed at a measure in Hartford whose terms are unclear. I don't know everybody in this room, but I know why they are here, elected to this body. They're here because they care. They care about their community. It is not for any outside group to tell us what our votes are or aren't, or interpret them in such a way. This SOMR is aimed at making a statement on behalf of my district I am not comfortable making. Despite all the local news reports and a lot of lawn signs, I've gotten one email for the SOMR and one against. So while the proponents of this legislation may be outraged about the possibility of tolls coming to Connecticut, my district does not appear to be. And I feel the best course is to dispense with this motion and postpone it indefinitely.
Frank Farraker, to be followed by Lorelei O'Hagan.
Good evening. I'm Frank Farraker. I'm a lifelong Greenwich Democrat, past chairman of the Greenwich Democratic Town Committee from 2008 to 2016. And I'm speaking tonight in a bipartisan fashion in favor of the sense of the meeting resolution to avoid tolls from the state of Connecticut. As a Democrat, I believe that government has a strong and positive role to play in making society better and more equal for all of us. I acknowledge and accept what I see before my eyes, that we do need to make upgrades for our infrastructure. However, I feel strongly that if we are to do this, we must do this in a way that all 3.5 million state residents share equally in the expenses and the benefits. Tolling will achieve, in my opinion, the exact opposite of that. It will increase income inequality, and it is designed to exploit our urban cores and geographic quirks to increase revenues. I believe it will be a social injustice. Tolling will serve to further expand the already giant burdens we place on the less fortunate, particularly in our cities, but though also in all the areas where tollings pass. It will particularly negatively affect the working poor, for whom our state practically mandates long drives. While I feel blessed to have been born in Greenwich and raised my children here, I am acutely aware that our very high home prices and lack of affordability push our working classes far out of town. The commutes from Fairfield, Danbury, and Sherman are long and soon very expensive. The specter of anywhere from $600 to $1,000 a year in tolling costs per family for the 2,000 people who work at Greenwich Hospital, for the 2,000 people who work in our school system, those thousands of people who, because of our affordability problems, we're asking them to go farther and pay more. I believe this burden will reroute traffic through our town. It's simple enough to hope that congestion pricing could possibly lower the cost and lower traffic, but that thought, I believe, exists in theory more than reality. In other states that toll, the highways are long limited access highways designed for distance travel, such as the Jersey Turnpike that has 18 exits over 130 miles. Our Connecticut Turnpike, for example, functions as a local road in Greenwich. I defy anyone here in this room to consider traveling from Old Greenwich to Glenville without contemplating 95 or the Merit. It's just a reality. It's logical that tolling will force many of modest means and many of us who don't want to pay those tolls off the roads.
30 seconds.
In Greenwich, no matter where the state line gantry is placed, it'll route traffic either across the Mill River Bridge or on Delavan Avenue. I believe strongly that if our governor and legislature were to present to us a capital plan that clearly and concisely lays out how we are going to spend the revenues, and if trust between our government and the governed were higher, I believe the good people of Connecticut would recognize the need and that we could collaboratively enact a special tax or enhance the gas tax where we all share the load.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and please vote in favor.
Lorelei O'Hagan to be followed by Mary Ellen Markowitz.
Hi, thanks everyone. I just want to speak directly to the moderator on this case. I'm just asking if you are willing to cede the RTM to be a election space, because it sounds like Senator Logan is perhaps running for election, and it sounds like people are bringing their.
Excuse me. Are you addressing?
I'm definitely addressing this. What I'm saying is that.
Well, you may not.
I can't directly address you.
You may not address a prior speaker. All remarks go to the chair and do not address other speakers.
That's what I'm saying. I'm addressing you. I'm asking you if you're willing to cede the floor of the RTM to people who want to bring their politics and partisan ideas to the table. So what I'm saying is that I would like to
if you'd
follow
like to
up
keep
with
speaking,
the same.
then address this motion, or I'm going to recognize the next speaker.
My speaking, I'm coming to speak to say that I agree that we should postpone indefinitely, because the nonpartisan nature of this body is so critically important to the work that we do here. I'm seconding the information that other people have said, but this is such a highly charged topic that it's bringing partisanship to this body.
Mary Ellen Markowitz to be followed by Pat Sasser.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ellen Markowitz from District 2, and I rise in support of the motion to postpone because I believe the issue of tolls does not fall under the RTM's purview. We have 3 state representatives and 1 state senator whom we elected to represent us in Hartford. This is a state legislative issue. We as members of the RTM have a responsibility to deal with the issues and budget of the town of Greenwich. Just look at all the speakers that we're having lined up. We may be here till midnight. Is this what we want to be doing? Debating the merits of Somers for all kinds of state issues? We could be opening the door to becoming a forum for laws regarding raising the minimum wage, open gun carry, paid family leave, universal child care, and abortion law, to name a few. Many people I know feel passionate about these vitally important issues as well. The individuals who crafted this SOMER can find other ways to make their voices heard in Hartford. They can spend a day at a legislative hearing and testify. I did so as a private citizen on March 6th regarding this very topic, tolls. I happen to be in favor of tolls because I think that residents of the surrounding states should help pay for our roads, just as we help maintain their roads every time we drive on their toll roads. And I could go on and on about other reasons why I believe in tolls. But I do not think the RTM should be sending this message on behalf of all the citizens of Greenwich. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Pat Sasser to be followed by John Blankley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Patrick Sasser. I'm the founder of No Tolls CT. I'm a resident of North Stamford, and I'm proud to say that my city was one of the first to come forward in a nonpartisan way and vote for a resolution against tolls. And the simple reason is this, folks. It is a tax. It is a tax on the working class, the working poor, all layers in our state. And the other reason is what it does to our local roads. The tolls that the state is looking to do is called congestion tolling, which is going to force people, by jacking up the prices of tolls, forcing them onto our back roads. So I urge you guys to please think about that, and I encourage you all to vote in favor of this resolution. It is time that the local municipalities have a voice and speak up, especially when it comes to an issue as important as this. Connecticut is ranked the second highest taxed state in the country. By implementing these tolls, we will easily become number one. This is our opportunity. I started this grassroots movement. I have a bipartisan group of people throughout the state working alongside with me on this issue. Almost 100,000 signatures on our online petition. Over almost 7,000 written testimonies went to the Transportation Committee against these tolls. I have Democratic lawmakers in Hartford who have now reached out to me and are telling me they are now against these tolls because they are listening to their constituents, listening to towns and cities that are voting on these resolutions. So I thank you guys, Laura, for inviting me here tonight to speak in front of you guys, and I urge you, please, think about the impact to our state, your community here in Greenwich, and I urge you to vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, John Blankley, to be followed by Rachel Khanna.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of town meeting. I had not expected that particular motion to come forward from Lucy. Had I been a member of the RTM, I would be voting not to postpone. It seems to me that this is such an important matter that any message that this body sends to Hartford is really important. So on the merits of the point itself, I've spent the better part of the past 2 years running for state treasurer, so frankly I have a closer handle on our state's finances than the average bear. And by the way, for those of you who know me, I'm not running for office this year yet. So I'm not going to go into the details of the financing. We know what the problem was. We raided the transportation fund in order to balance the state budget, and so we underinvested in infrastructure. This neglect is a legacy problem, and my first point in my argument against tolls. We are all responsible for this problem, not just road users. In the end, roads benefit all of us. They are collective responsibility. My second point is that tolling is going to hit the little man. My office is in Shelton, and a huge new apartment complex is being built there near our office. Workers come in from all over, by road of course, seeking work, and of course contributing to our economic growth. They will be hit hard. Then there are the countless people that Frank Farrakhan mentioned who pour into our community every day. I see them in the traffic jams on the other side of the Merritt as I travel up to Shelton. Are we going to add insult to injury and make them pay for the privilege of sitting on our congested roads? The likelihood is, of course, that there will be significant spillover into local roads with all the attendant wear and tear and pollution and so forth. Point number 3, small business. Take mine as an example. Based in Shelton, I'm happy to tell you that I'm hiring. If there are any systems engineers out there or anyone you know, then get them to contact me. We have good pay and conditions and a boss who will be fighting against tolls. On any given day, we might have a dozen techs out on the roads, clocking up 500,000 miles a year at 5.5 cents a mile, which is the lowest rate I've heard. That adds up and represents a cost to my employees and my business. Do I need to ask, is this good for business? Hardly.
30 seconds.
So what about the out-of-state freeloaders? It's superficially enticing to think about the 30%, but I concentrate on the 70%. The alternative is a plan put forward by the party across the aisle. I'm not one of those who believes that such policies should be rejected ipso facto because they come from parties on the other side. So to conclude, we have a legacy problem that we are all responsible for. Tolls will hit the little man. Tolls are regressive. And tolls are bad for business. Please vote for the sense of the meeting resolution. Thank you.
Rachel Khanna, to be followed by Lucy Von Brockel.
Mr. Moderator, fellow RTM members, my name is Rachel Khanna. I'm an RTM member in District 10. I rise in support of the motion to postpone the SOMR indefinitely, not because I am for or against tolls, but because I feel that the issue of tolls does not fall under the RTM scope. We have not been privy to a comprehensive study or public hearings on the effects of tolls on each and every single Greenwich resident, and therefore are in no position to vote on the subject matter. If, according to the proponents of the SOMR, the goal is to send a message to Hartford, then I believe there are other, more suitable forums to do so. And if we do vote on this SOMR, does that mean that we can begin to take up other legislative issues? Can we truly say that we are able to make these decisions without the full knowledge of their ramifications on behalf of each and every single Greenwich resident? Finally, voting on the SOMR and possibly taking on other legislative issues being discussed in Hartford will divert attention away from things we should be doing locally, adding hours to each RTM cycle. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Thank you.
Lucy Von Brockel, to be followed by Denise Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It is rare that the RTM uses a SOMR to speak on behalf of the town on state and national issues, and there is good reason. Our voice should be as unified as possible when we undertake a SOMR of this nature. It should be so clear to the vast majority of us that the message we are sending is right and correct, that there is little need or desire to debate its merits. But the SOMR before us addresses a highly charged and divisive political issue making its way through the state legislature. If we move to vote on this SOMR for an issue that is this contentious, it will diminish the power of our collective voice. Our RTM is nonpartisan, and I hope it can remain nonpartisan. I value the way we are able to tackle local Greenwich issues as neighbors with the common goal of maintaining and improving our quality of life here. Despite our individual differences, we work well together on behalf of the entire Greenwich community, and through compromise, we tend to accomplish a lot of good. And while some feel that this message against tolls is worth sending, we need to be mindful of the other messages voting on this SOMR would send. For one, we are inviting any group of 20 petitioners to use the RTM as a megaphone for people protesting state legislation. While that is perfectly within the rights of any group of town residents, that does not mean that we have to take it on. We're also sending a message to our constituents that we will set aside municipal concerns, like the budget we will vote on next month, to argue over legislation that we as an elected body have no fundamental control over. And it's not as though we do not have other means to communicate to our opinion on state issues to our elected officials. We can call them, we can email them, we can post on their Facebook pages, we can rally, we can start petitions, we can vote, and we can gather with like-minded people to amplify the message we wish to send through grassroots groups like No Tolls CT. We do not need to send messages to the state through an RTM resolution. When we have tackled local ordinances that have stirred political conflict, like the bag ban or fracking waste ban, we did research through committees and held public hearings. We had multiple reads of the ordinances, and those with differences of opinion ultimately brought compromise through edits to the final product. But this is being pushed through with very little understanding of the consequences. There are 3 toll-related bills heading to the legislature from committee, and none of them have been fully fleshed out. We have not been informed of the economic impact on taxpayers of any of the alternatives that anyone is mentioning here tonight.
30 seconds.
None of us can say for certain at this point which option will result in the smallest burden to the taxpayers we represent. So instead of submitting to this SOMR, I would urge you to vote yes to postpone it indefinitely and find more fitting means to communicate your concern or support for tolls to the state. Thank you.
Denise Savage, to be followed by Karen Giannuzzi.
Good evening. My name is Denise Savage. I'm a resident of Greenwich. I live at 72 Oak Ridge Street.
And I'm here in support of the motion to postpone and against the SOMAR. And my message is that we should be not voting on something because of fear. We should not be fearing tolls. We should be fearless as we move forward, looking at different types of transportation, making sure that we are looking at how we use our transportation, whether it be a highway corridor or improving mass transit. When we're talking about the poorest of the poor, those who are seniors, we're not talking about people who are in their cars driving only on highways. We're talking about people who are using mass transit. And there's no one here talking about the fee to ride the train, calling that a tax. We're only calling it a tax when we're in our private cars riding on the highway. We need to be thinking of it as a user fee, just like you think of it as a user fee when you get on mass transit. Fairfield County has the worst air quality east of the Mississippi. We need to be, and most of that air quality is coming from traffic congestion on I-95. We are already experiencing major congestion on Route 1. So to have a fear that all of us traffic from I-95 is all of a sudden going to spill into Greenwich, it's already happening. And we need to be fearless looking at how we're going to spend money on infrastructure, including mass transit, on fixing the transportation problem. The same old is not going to do what we need to do. There's two parts of your resolution that really look at that. You're talking about increasing traffic and pollution on Greenwich's roads. It's already there. So suggesting that that is going to change because of tolls is just incorrect. People are already getting off of the highways every time it's overcrowded to go on the Greenwich roads. Not only that, all of that transportation already is having a problem. We know the economic impacts of it on the businesses, on the business community.
30
but
seconds.
The air quality is huge. So that piece of that makes no sense to me. The other thing is you have a part of your resolution says where many of the residents of Greenwich use these roadways each day for work, family obligations, pleasure, and spend a significant amount of time on these roadways, which will result in substantial burden on the people of Connecticut. What does that even mean? So when you have a sense of a resolution, what I'm looking at is that every single...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Vulgaris, next time we have to say, please print clearly. There are a lot of names here that I just can't read. All right, it's going to be Karen Giannuzzi. Is there a Hillary who signed up? All right, to be followed by Hillary. Karen Giannuzzi.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm just here to ask you to vote in favor of the motion to postpone. Most of what I wanted to say has already been said. I would just add that the more we take on these complex issues that are already being discussed at another legislative body, the more we distract from the primary jobs that we have to do here in our town. We have enough things that we have to do with the budget. We have to figure out how we're going to pay to fix our schools. Lots of other things going on, and this really just becomes a distraction. We have a place. If you have a strong feeling about it, you can go to your state legislatures. You can lobby there, but. Is someone I know says, everyone should stay in their own sandbox, and I think that would probably be wise words here. Thank you.
All right, Hillary to be followed by last name Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Hillary Gunn,
Hillary Gunn.
So everybody knows. While I didn't expect it, the fight against tolls has overtaken my life these past few months. In early February, I joined a group of 8 outside Greenwich Library, and I was upset. At that point, my opposition to tolls was personal and borderline selfish. I did not want to pay tolls. Something happened, however, when I began to discuss tolls with more people. I heard diverse, horrifying stories of what this expenditure would mean to them in the context of their lives.
Momentum grew, and I started to attend anything and everything toll related, desperate to make some kind of difference for these people, my new friends. Since that first little gathering, I've spent 3 days in Hartford protesting tolls. I've also attended separate additional protests in Stamford, Waterbury, Berlin, Danbury, Cromwell, Stratford, West Hartford, Manchester, Southington, and New Haven. I've seen more of this phenomenal state than ever before, and most importantly, have discussed tolls with literally hundreds of ordinary people from all walks of life. These are individuals who have joined me at protests, certainly, but they are also pedestrians and even motorists who pull over to gather information on the tolls. These are strangers who approach me in the Stop and Shop because of my hat, which is, by the way, the best marketing $6 of yarn has ever purchased, and incredulously ask me, is this really happening, and what can I do? These are not people who are simply ornery at the thought of tightening their belts and shifting monies within their budgets. These are people, families, who literally cannot afford such an added expense. Even those who do not drive and would see no explicit financial intrusion panic over residual impacts, such as a rise in the cost of products and services. All of the technical debate about funds and banks and partnerships has been unable to drown out the legitimate concerns of so many who simply have no more to give. I'm not here to pretend that my experience is scientific in nature, but rather to express the anecdotal anguish consistently displayed from border to border in Connecticut. You may be wondering how this pertains to our duties as town representatives. First, fracking. Second, as you've already heard, tolling will have an impact on people in our community. Third, it is precisely our unique position as both citizens and representatives of Greenwich that lends such force to our message for Hartford. Let us act as both example and protectorate of our fellow nutmeggers. This is our state. This is our home. Let us raise our voice and demand a say in its future. Let us vote yes tonight on this SOMAR and no forever on tolls. Thank you.
All right, Barrett, to be followed by Marita Hamre.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, I'm Stephanie Barrett, an RTM member from District 5 in Riverside. I'm here to support the motion to postpone item number 2 indefinitely. The legislation on proposed tolling in Connecticut has not been written yet. I believe we shouldn't be taking this up without knowing how tolling will fit into the full budget of the state of Connecticut. Until we actually see what is in the bill, it is irresponsible to our constituents to not do our due diligence. We should not vote on this sense of the meeting resolution tonight. I am in favor of postponing item number 2 indefinitely. Thank you.
Marita Hamre, to be followed by Steve Kay.
There are two very different issues being debated at the same time here. The first is the motion to postpone, which is whether the RTM is going to take a position on this state issue at all. The second is on the merits, and that is if we do send a message, what should that message be? I guess I will be addressing primarily the first issue on whether we should be addressing this issue at all. This body simply cannot address the issue of tolls in isolation. Instituting tolls may be part of an overall plan for how the state is going to repair and upgrade its roads and bridges, which currently are clogged, damaged, and unsafe. They simply must be fixed, which will become at great expense. For this body to declare that one of the funding options should be taken entirely off the table would suggest that we, as a body, have seriously and fully considered all of the alternatives for funding our state transportation infrastructure and their impact on our state and town. We have not done that. In fact, we have received quite a bit of misinformation and speculation. Voting for this resolution without a full grasp of the transportation, infrastructure, environmental, and funding issues involved would belittle this institution and would diminish its authority when it decides to speak on other serious and fully vetted resolutions. I urge you to vote to postpone.
Steve K., to be followed by Gina Gladstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd just like to, well, first of all, my name is Steve Kohlenberg. I'm a city representative from your can you guys hear me now? Okay. My name is Steve Kohlenberg. I'm a city representative from next door in Stamford. Is that good? Okay. I'm going to hold it up right to my mouth. I'm a little bit tall. I'm a city representative from next door in Stamford, the chairman of the Transportation Committee, and a Republican. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Jeff Stella, who's the chairman of the Public Safety Committee and a Democrat. I'm going to use my time right now to address a couple major concerns that seem to be floating through the room. And, I think that you all need to hear it. First of all is the idea that this is a partisan issue. It's not. I'm standing right here with a good friend of mine who's a Democrat. 19 Democrats voted for the no tolls resolution in Stamford. 19. And they are lifelong members of the party who have been on that board for decades. And they say no tolls because they listen to the voice of the people. Another thing I keep on hearing, well, this is, we don't know what's in these bills. We have no idea. We shouldn't comment on something that we don't know anything about. Well, I used to work in Hartford, and when controversial bills like this come up, they tend to hide the information from rank and file legislators and their staffs until the last possible minute. It's very possible that there is a tolls plan out there this second, but only a handful of people know about it, and they're not, and to be honest, it's probably more than likely they're going to release that information the night of the vote. So, which feeds into my third point. You guys here in Greenwich have the unique opportunity of being one of the most primal, one of the most direct democracies in the country. The RTM basically originates from the Puritan era, right? We have 40 members on our board. We think that's a lot. 260? 230? I heard 260. Okay, so it's still 200 plus. Oh, like that's amazing. You guys have the very unique opportunity of being so close to your neighbors, to your constituents, to your colleagues and friends. You know what's on their mind. And if a lot of you are hearing the same thing that I'm hearing from my constituents, that tolls are going to hurt them, people like my brother who drive to Stratford every day for work, who's making $35,000 a year, if you tack on the extra cost of tolls to that, he's not going to be able to afford to go to work. You know people like this in your neighborhoods. You don't only have the opportunity to speak against it, you have the duty to speak against it and represent your folks. And I'm going to pass it over to my friend Jeff real quick.
All right, excuse me. That's not how it works, sir. With 230, we got to follow the rules. So if you're done, you're done.
Okay. Sorry. So he's probably going to speak to what I was saying, but it's your duty to speak out. If you feel strongly about this, don't be afraid. Speak your mind and speak it clearly. Send a message to Hartford. Thank you.
Gina Gladstein, to be followed by Peter Berg.
Hello, I'm Gina Gladstein. I live in District 6. I'm going to ask you to... sorry. Gina Gladstein. I live in District 6. First, I would like to appreciate all the RTM members here who devote their time and attention to running our town. I am so appreciative. This is the first RTM meeting that I've come to, and I'm really impressed, and thank you. I'm going to ask you to support the motion to postpone indefinitely the sense of the meeting resolution. I think that everyone has said pretty much what needs to be said tonight, and I appreciate again your time. Thank you.
Peter Berg.
Good evening.
To be followed by Karen Fossiliotis.
Good evening again. I support the motion to postpone indefinitely because so many of the so-called facts that have been given to you in support of this motion appear to be wildly exaggerated. You're being told that it's going to cost you $1,500 a year in tolls. Well, to pay $1,500 a year in tolls, you'd have to commute more than 50 miles a day on Connecticut highways. I know more Greenwich residents who drive Teslas than I know Greenwich residents who commute more than 50 miles a day on Connecticut highways. And speaking of Teslas, Teslas don't use any gasoline, so they're using our highways for free. And you can buy a Chevy Bolt, a Nissan Leaf, a Jaguar I-Pace, or many other vehicles now that don't use any gasoline. And you know who else uses our highways for free? Residents of New Jersey. You know, an opponent who lives in Bellhaven says with tolls you won't be able to afford vacations. Well, I suppose if you vacation in Nantucket and commute back and forth to Greenwich every other day, maybe that's true. Now, if I lived in Bellhaven near I-95, I would not oppose congestion tolls. Congestion pricing will reduce traffic jams that spew exhaust over houses in Bellhaven near I-95. Congestion tolls reduce childhood asthma by 50% in Stockholm. I could point out many others, but I just point out that if you were to vote for the resolution as it appears on the call, which I know you're not being asked to do right now, you're saying you would never support tolls ever. So please vote for the motion to postpone.
What is your point of information? All right, that is not a point of information. Excuse me, you don't have the floor. Karen Fossiliotis, to be followed by Miriam Cruiser.
I urge you to vote no to postpone indefinitely. Are tolls a municipal issue that will affect Greenwich? Absolutely. Should this RTM take this up? Absolutely. Unlike many of you, I have actually heard from our town workers and some school teachers on how they feel about tolls. Your vote against postponing indefinitely or a vote for the SOMAR will let them know that Greenwich does not feel it is okay for them to pay more for the privilege of working here. Or if that is not a compelling argument, think about how all of us will be paying more for goods and services as the cost of tolls is passed on to us. Tolls never go down in price, they only go up, which means that groceries, hospital supplies, gasoline, home heating oil, well, you get the idea, will go up as the tolls go up. Tolls will absolutely affect all of us in Greenwich. And as you have heard already tonight, it is a regressive tax that will mostly affect the folks in Greenwich who are struggling to stay ahead and can afford it the least. Partisan effort? Of course it isn't. This is a nonpartisan effort that has everyone working together to prevent something that will be a detriment to our town. No one speaking against tolls tonight cares if you are a Democrat, Republican, Independent, unaffiliated, working party, or any other label that you might have. We may differ in our reasoning, but the message and conclusion is the same. Tolls are bad for Greenwich. Congestion pricing is front and central in all of these toll bills, and that will mean more traffic for Greenwich. Many of you were probably not here in the 60s and 70s. I were. The toll then was 25 cents, and people would get off at Byram just to avoid the 25-cent toll. Think about it when it's $2 or more. I know I, for one, will not be hopping on I-95 as I go to Portchester or Stamford if there are tolls on our road. That's one more car on our local roads. And others have told me the same. Congestion pricing will definitely affect our quality of life, pure and simple. It is by design meant to divert traffic off the toll road to alternative roads. And that means more traffic in Greenwich. It has happened before, and it will happen again. I urge you to reject the motion to postpone indefinitely, and when this motion is voted down, I urge you to vote yes for the SOMAR to let the voices of those in town who will be affected the most by this proposal be heard, the people who are struggling to make every dollar count. Thank you.
Miriam Cruiser, to be followed by David Cox.
Good evening. My name is Miriam Cruiser, District 7. Mr. Moderator, fellow members of the RTM. Over the last few weeks, we have been bombarded with numbers and data that paint a fairly bleak picture of our state. But I rise up today to paint a picture of Connecticut that few seem to be talking about, one of cautious optimism. For the first time in decades, the outside world is looking more positively on Connecticut. S&P raised Connecticut's general obligation bonds from stable to positive for the first time in 18 years. The rating agency is clearly impressed by our reserves and our bonding cap. A quick tip of the hat to the Republicans who pushed for it in our bipartisan budget 2 years ago. But S&P also indicate very clearly that they were incited to act by many of Governor Lamont's positions, including his debt diet. Lamont's debt diet calls for around $1 billion per year in bonding. That's nearly $1 billion below our bonding cap. You can see why S&P thinks this is exciting. The counterproposal to tolls, called Priority Progress, suggests we should spend $1 billion on bonding up to the cap for infrastructure needs. That is $1 billion above the debt diet, the same potential diet lauded by S&P. Senator Logan, who is anti-toll and spoke before us earlier, confirmed my understanding of this at our District 7 meeting. Another positive data point. Our state just issued $1 billion in new bonds. They were wildly oversubscribed. For every one bond available, there were 5 buyers. Our debt was so attractive, we were actually able to pay out less interest rate on our debt. That's real money. Some of the cost savings were due to a very attractive municipal market, for sure. But as a Dan Haar article explained this weekend, about half of the savings in our debt issuance seem to be solely a function of a more positive view of Connecticut. Lastly, according to a report by the Greenwich Times last June in 2018, Bridgeport, Stamford, Norwalk metro area, so roughly Fairfield County, had a GDP growth of 20% from 2010 to 2016. The rest of the state, a paltry 4%. The areas outside of Fairfield County are underserved in transportation options and or woefully overserved with congestion. How is CT, with the exception of Fairfield County, going to make use of our comparative advantage, which is being relatively close to 2 major U.S. cities, if we can't move people nor goods effectively? Perhaps Greenwich won't get every dollar spent on tolls back onto our roads, although I do believe reduced congestion will be positive for our community.
30 seconds.
But how is that, fellow Greenwich RTM members, during our budget season where we rightfully bemoan how we disproportionately support the rest of the state and get little in return? How can we vote to potentially impeding progress in the rest of our state, and that's in parts that so desperately need it, particularly as the cost of that investment will be shared by those beyond our state borders who use our roads. There is a risk that we shoot ourselves in the foot here, RTM members. Please vote nuance, vote cautious optimism, please vote positive momentum, please vote yes on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Thank you.
David Cox, to be followed by Bob Brady.
Mr. Moderator, good evening, members of the RTM and guests. My name is David Cox, and I live in District 6. I stand before you tonight to speak against the no-toll resolution. This SOMR effectively states that Greenwich is against any tolls anywhere, any time in Connecticut. Not only does the resolution assert that tolls will increase traffic on local roads, which is not necessarily true, but its proponents often claim that tolls will hurt those of limited means, that the local business community opposes tolls, and that the lockbox isn't real. Regarding local traffic, it's true that some motorists may decide to use local streets and add minutes of travel time every 5 or 6 miles to avoid paying a toll of 25 or 30 cents. But neglected in the discussion is the fact that current laws prohibit truck-through traffic on our local roads. Also neglected is the fact that tolls encourage carpooling and public transit, which in addition to reducing pollution and greenhouse gases will reduce highway congestion. Further, congestion pricing will provide additional incentive for discretionary travel to be scheduled during non-peak times. As a result, and because GPS apps route around delays, not tolls, it is entirely plausible that tolling will reduce through traffic on local streets. It is not a knowable fact to state otherwise. Will tolls hurt the neediest? The technology and framework being proposed can differentiate motorists and can allow policies that provide credits or discounts to those in need, as well as frequent users or classes of workers. Furthermore, using some tolling revenue to subsidize public transit will not only reduce congestion, but will also tend to benefit people of limited means. Additionally, collecting money from non-residents to support transportation allows us to use some of our money, which would have otherwise been destined for transportation, to be reallocated to shore up programs which target the needy. Will tolls hurt local business? Some will likely be hurt, and some will likely be helped, and some may not be affected at all. It is disingenuous to claim otherwise. Businesses that face out-of-state competition will have a competitive advantage because they will pay lower tolls than the competition. Some businesses may be able to pass all of the toll costs on to the end consumer. Regardless, all businesses will benefit from better transportation infrastructure paid for in part by non-resident dollars. Less congestion means less time in traffic and more time earning a living. It is not surprising, therefore, that the Fairfield County Business Council has signed up and endorsed tolls. Is the lockbox real? Yes. In fact, tolling is the surest way to keep the lockbox locked.
30 seconds.
If we were to choose to use the tolling proceeds for any purpose other than improving our transportation infrastructure, we would have to reimburse the federal government a prohibitive amount. In conclusion, this resolution imagines problems with tolling while simultaneously asking you to not imagine possible solutions. The framework in Hartford seeks to imagine both. There is no other proposal for financing our transportation infrastructure that does not ultimately rely on residents to pick up the entire bill. As homeowners, would
Thank
we
you
not
very
insist?
much. Bob Brady, to be followed by Molly Colombo. What is your point of order? Could you please stand up? The motion on the floor is the tolls. No. No, you may go to the merits on a motion to postpone indefinitely. If the motion is adopted, it is disposed of. Robert's rule specifically allows debate to go to the merits of the underlying issue. Bob Brady.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members, guests. I'm Bob Brady. I live in Riverside. I had the honor of serving 20 years on this body with Lucy of her 41. And I rise to support her motion to postpone item 2 indefinitely. She is right on point in terms of the authority the RTM has when it speaks through a sense of the meeting resolution. It's not quite the same as a motion to appropriate money or to appoint someone or to adopt an ordinance, each of which has a very specific action. But a sense of the meeting is the voice of the town. You used it very effectively last year on the fire station issue, and you have that now in the budget coming before you next month. Using that in this instance is an area where the RTM has not done the research. It hasn't had the opportunity to. The bills that are before the legislature are not in a position to actually be reviewed. On the merits, of course, I agree with Mr. Meskers. I believe that tolls are a useful way of raising money to support our transportation infrastructure. However, I urge you to vote yes on the motion to postpone. You take advantage of our representative government. Call Steve if you've got a question and you're in the 150th, Fred Camillo in the 151st, Livy in the 149th, and Alex Bergstein for everybody else in the 36th district. They are in Hartford. They are working on this. They are our representatives there, and they serve us in Hartford. Thank you.
Molly Colombo, to be followed by Aaron Leonard.
I'm Molly Colombo. I'm a resident of District 6, and I, too, am in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely the sense of the meeting resolution. The points that I had planned to make have been ably made by others, so that is the end of my talk.
Aaron Leonard, to be followed by Doug Wells.
Good evening, Aaron Leonard, District 12. I won't take up any more time as these points have been made, but I would say that I would commend our representatives that are here this evening, and especially say to Mr. Camillo that I reached out to him on Sunday and got a response today, which is incredible. Representative government can and does work. For this state-level issue, these are the people you should be directing it to, and as has been said, this forum, the town meeting, is not the appropriate forum for this issue. Thank you.
Doug Wells, to be followed by Jeffrey Stewart.
I'm in support of the motion to postpone as well. Three things I would like to address. One is the principal proponent spoke of, you rattled them off quickly. I counted 9 towns that have come out with a resolution. That my calculation means there's about 160 that have chosen not to move as a municipality on this issue. In the 20 years that I've been chair of the Legislative and Rules Committee, I cannot remember a time, and my memory is not what it used to be, but I do not remember a time when a sense of the meeting resolution came to our committee where we addressed somebody who was not a municipal official or a municipal body. I think it's a slippery slope to go on to be doing this. The last point I'd like to make is that we need to remember why we're here and how we're here, the RTM members, and that is we are elected to represent our townspeople in municipal matters. This resolution that you're looking at in the resolve clause says that we as RTM members are urging its elected representatives. Well, those are state representatives. Our townspeople did not elect us to speak on their behalf to state legislators, only to address matters within the town. They elected them separately. They can speak to them separately. They don't need us to do that for them.
Jeffrey Stewart to be followed by Henry Orthus.
I am Jeffrey Stewart, and I am a townsperson. And I'd just like to second what the gentleman just said, and that is we voters have elected all of you RTM members to represent us and to govern Greenwich. That's what you should do. You shouldn't get involved in state issues. It's not in our benefit. So I urge you to postpone this motion indefinitely. Thank you.
Henry Orphis to be followed by Janet McMahon.
Henry Orphis, District 7. Unlike some of the other people who have spoken and have not heard from many of their constituents, I have. I have heard from some who are in favor of tolls and even more who are against. A number of people have asked me to vote against tolls, that is to say, in support of the sense of the meeting resolution. And I suspect that a number of you in the audience who have not risen to speak have probably heard from your constituents too. Regardless of what some individuals may think about whether the RTM should be sending a message to its representatives in Hartford instead of letting the citizens do that directly, the citizens, at least to me, have spoken and asked us to do that. I think we should follow their wishes, and I ask you to vote against the motion to postpone indefinitely so that the RTM can hear from the various citizens who have come to express their opinions tonight. We can do what our voters have asked us to do. Thank you.
Janet McMahon to be followed by Brian Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, members of the RTM. I'm a representative in District 8, and I support the motion to postpone item 2 indefinitely. I joined Southington Town Council, Meriden City Council, Danbury City Council, and New Britain Common Council, who have all tabled and or rejected the very resolution before us. Because 1, we do not have enough information about what the final bill will look like, and therefore should not and cannot vote for or against it at this point. And 2, this non-binding symbolic gesture is nothing but political maneuvering that will open up the floodgates for anyone with 25 signatures to use the RTM as a platform for their partisan political agenda. Additionally, it is not wise for the RTM to go on record rejecting any and all tolling in perpetuity as this SOMAR is written. For all of the aforementioned reasons, I ask you to join Southington, Meriden, Danbury, New Britain, and other towns who have refused to take this item up by voting yes to the motion to postpone item 2 indefinitely. Thank you very much.
It's actually only 20 signatures that you need to bring it before the RTM. 25 to get on the ballot in November. All right, Brian Rainey to be followed by Andrew Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I was shocked when I started getting emails against the SOMAR, so I put up a little poll on nextdoor.com, and it ran 80% against tolls, 20% in favor of tolls. I'm from District 9, Pembroke, Glenville. We get a lot of cut-through already of people getting off at the first exit, last exit in New York, kind of first exit in Connecticut, cutting down our local streets. There's a nice blue McLaren that I pass every morning as he flies by me and goes down Pembroke, our 25-mile-per-hour road, past our park, up Mosier and down Weaver to the Post Road. But this really isn't about that. The SOMAR's about tolls, but it's really about infrastructure. So I got to ask, who of you didn't pay for your infrastructure? Who's been skimming on their gas tax? No? Nobody? No, we've all paid. The truth of the matter is that Hartford, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever, you've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for decades. And I have a simple solution for that. Doesn't involve bonding or tolling. It's simply rob Paul. Pay Peter what you owe him and rob Paul. Thank you.
Andrew Winston, to be followed by Dean Gamanos.
Hi, Andrew Winston, District 12. I hope I'm not Paul. I'm not sure what that means, actually. So I just want to address, we've heard a lot of things. I want to address quickly some aspects of the economics, which I have an economics degree from Princeton. I'm sorry that sounds braggy, but I just want to give you some context about why I'm coming on this topic, because I've heard some incredible misinformation on economics. We heard from the original proponent that, and we've heard repeatedly that any kinds of user fees would be passed on through goods and services. That's not technically how economics works. Technically, there's things called elasticities of demand. Not everything gets passed on. A lot of stuff is eaten by companies when they get particular taxes or fees. It just doesn't work that way. There's also this idea that it's unfair as a user fee. It is actually a user fee, as defined, is one of the most fair constructs of getting collection of resources, meaning you are paying per mile. You're using the common resource and you're paying for that use. Right now, someone, say on a fixed income, someone who's not getting out as much, retired, who's not driving much, actually is paying through taxes for something that she or he does not use. That arguably is unfair. This is the most fair thing I can think of to raise resources for what we need to repair. Also, that it may be regressive. Absolutely, it can be. When something's paid by user, by mile, the people who start with less, it's a bigger percentage of their expenses. But we have other ways to address that. We've heard teachers might have to drive further and pay more. We in this town could then do something with our BET, with our BOE, to make sure that teachers get refunded for their travel expenses. That's something we could do. Is that too expensive for everybody? Okay. And the main point is, if there's going to be if we're going to need infrastructure improvements, and we do, the state needs it, it will be paid for somehow. The bonding, which could lead to trillions in debt, will lead to taxes. It comes through to us in some way. This is the most equal way to do it, a user fee. And finally, basically all goods that go to New England come through our county. You know that the most congested part of the entirety of I-95 from the Keys to Maine is right here, right by where we live. All goods come through here, and none of those trucks from outside our state pay a penny for that right now. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to accept that revenue. Thank you.
Dean Gamanos, to be followed by Mary Flynn. What? No. No, I'm not recognizing you. Dean Gamanos, to be followed by Mary Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow representatives, distinguished guests. I'm actually a little surprised that people are saying that this should be postponed. After all, I-95 runs through downtown Greenwich. The Merritt Parkway runs through one of our major neighborhoods in mid-country. You heard several speakers talking about going from Old Greenwich to Portchester or to Byram using these routes. So this is part of our life. This is part of our environment. And I don't think we should just say, oh, we should just sit here and ignore all of this information because the people in Hartford will take care of it. You know something? I attended a library meeting 3 months ago where tolling came up. And I asked a question which really wasn't answered. It was, how much is this going to cost to build? How much are these machines that they put up, the Gamrets or whatever we call them, what's the investment in that? And I've since found out, but you know, this information is not forthcoming. One of the speakers from Stanford suggested that maybe people are keeping it quiet and then bringing this up for a vote when we're least prepared for it. And I'm beginning to believe that, because this is an important issue. There's information out there. We should be getting that information. We shouldn't say, oh, leave it to our representatives. Yes, we have great representatives. I don't mean to say you guys aren't important. But this is a great body. This is a democratic body, and I think we should be heard. And I also want to address a few items. Whether this is a regressive tax or not has been debated quite a bit. I think it does, and I think one of the speakers made a good argument for why people who could least afford it are going to have to pay for it. But I don't know how many of you realize this. A document was passed around from our town leaders that only 2% of the revenues are likely to go to the benefit of the people who live
30
around here.
seconds.
So it's mostly for some of the other communities like Danbury, Waterbury, Hartford. It's also going to be a statewide system. I don't know if all three of those proposals talk about a statewide system, but all the maps I've seen seem to indicate that it is. Now, does that sound so great? You know, when we're trying to sell Greenwich to people who want to move to Connecticut, hey, we have a statewide toll system. You can pay tolls all over the place. Doesn't make sense to me. And
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you,
Mary
Mr. Moderator.
Flynn, to be followed by Dan Quigley. We're running right through them. We're almost.
Hi, I'm Mary Flynn from District 12, and I would like to speak in support of the motion to postpone indefinitely. But I'd also like to speak about this whole tolling. I wrote a letter to the editor in support of tolls that was in the Greenwich Time on Tuesday. Having over 300 bridges categorized as structurally deficient, I find unacceptable. Our bridge collapsed and people died. That was a result of improper maintenance. We need to do better. We can do better. Connecticut also has, I found out tonight, 4 railroad bridges that are 99 years old. We need to pay attention, make transportation safe, and be fiscally responsible for our future. The choice is tolls or bonding. People are acting as though bonds are not debt instruments and that we won't have to pay them with interest with our taxes. A usage fee is not a tax, regardless of how often people say they are. Yes, tolls are an economic burden, which I understand will be addressed in Hartford, as should the whole economic dichotomy of our society, as Mr. Dalio discussed on 60 Minutes this past Sunday. I don't think this is our purview. Let's let our state officials handle it. We elected them to do that. Everyone should please make their opinions known to the governor and your legislators individually. This is not the way to do it. It's not our job to be informed enough. You know, we're the town. We're the RTM, where the T is for town. So let's stick to our issues and be well informed on them. Basically, I highly support postponing the SOMR indefinitely. Thank you.
Dan Quigley, to be followed by Kathy Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow RTM members. Guys having fun tonight? It's what we get paid the big bucks for, right? I'm shocked that not enough people, or hardly any people, have even addressed the thesis of what I want to speak about. We've been bombarded with numbers and economic theories and how much this might cost, and it's all confusing and it's too much. It's about one issue. It's not about the viability of tolls as a means to raise money. It's about trust. It's only about trust. That's all this debate is about. It is not Republican, it's not Democrat. Money has been there for 40 years to help fix our infrastructure. Mianus River happened 36 years ago. Nothing has been done in 36 years. Republican and Democratic administrations have put this off. We do need to raise money. But we're facing a problem in Greenwich right now that we're all concerned about. People keep talking about we shouldn't opine about the state. Let's talk about Greenwich. There's a BOE plan where the BOE is going to come to us and ask for money. Imagine for a minute that the BOE came to the RTM and said, we'd like $750 million to $1 billion for infrastructure repairs to schools. We have no plan. We have no timetable. We have no itemized list of projects that we want to raise money for, but we'd like you to give it to us. And imagine that the BOE had run up debt after debt after debt for decades and taken our town's taxpayers' funds and wasted them. Would you be inclined to vote for that? Would anyone in this room vote for that? Anybody? No. That's what this issue is about. Hartford Republicans and Hartford Democrats have squandered budget surpluses, squandered taxpayers' money for 30, 40, 50 years. And now they're back here again, asking us for more money. It's going to go to infrastructure. We don't know what it's about. We don't have any itemized list. The onus is on the state government to repair the irrevocably broken trust that they have with their constituents. It's not on us to trust them again. It's on them to reestablish the bridge of trust to us.
30 seconds.
It's on them to present us with a plan that's point by point what projects they want to raise money for. It's on them to balance a budget. It's on them to reduce the debt. Then after that, we can look at tolls. But until the state government acts responsibly, not one person in this room should be able to look anyone else with a straight face and say they are for giving more money to Hartford. I am against the motion to postpone and for the Somer. Thank you.
Kathy Steele. Kathy Steele to be followed by Brooks Harris.
Hello, my name is Kathy Steele. I'm from District 11. I'm not here tonight to speak for or against tolls. Both sides have made very strong arguments, and there's much listening and learning still to do. However, I am here to speak against this Somer, which purely and simply I find to be political theater. We were elected by our district neighbors to legislate local, Greenwich-specific issues and not to spend our time sending messages to Hartford. Those who brought this Somer to the RTM could just as easily, and perhaps more impactfully, have taken these issues directly to our state legislators. Those legislators, not the Greenwich legislators, will be voting on this matter. And that is where these presentations and any related protests are really appropriately directed. There have been many hours of committee and district meetings about this Somer, many hours tonight. Imagine if this time had been spent instead for the greater, direct, and immediate good for Greenwich. What if we had been talking about infrastructure needs for our own roads and our own schools? How about grass versus artificial turf fields for our own athletes? Sustainability measures to benefit our air, water, and quality of life? Our town budget, which looms before us next month. No matter your opinion on tolls, for, against, or undecided, I urge you to vote to support the postponement of this Somer, and if that would fail tonight, to vote against the Somer, which I find is a distraction from the real work of the RTM. Thank you.
Brooks Harris to be followed by Monica Prahoda.
Hello. I'm here to speak in opposition to the tolls, and I will also address the issue of whether we should take this up or not, since I guess those two issues are on the table. The first thing I want to say is on the merits, I don't systematically oppose tolls. I don't think that tolls are evil or, there's arguments for and against, but I do think it's time for us to make a stand with Hartford to say the only two ways we can address the problem are not tolls or higher debt. There's a third element that we need to be talking about, and that's the expense side as well. And I think that often gets lost. It's the hardest thing to do, and that's why we're not doing it. But I think if we're going to solve our budget problem, which is holistic, we have to address all of those at the same time. And if we do the easy thing first, which is raising revenues, we'll never get to the hard thing, and we'll be facing a problem down the road again. So on the merits, I think we should say no today, and then once Hartford shows us a holistic problem that doesn't involve taking on a lot of debt or raising a lot of taxes, but really addresses all three things, including expenses, then we can consider that in the mix. But if we say yes today, we'll never get that. Now I want to talk about why it's appropriate for us as a body to take it up. People say we're elected to address municipal issues. The reality is most people who vote for us don't really know how government works. They don't know the difference between the BET and the BOE and the RTM. Honestly, they don't. But they do know, oh, hey, I know Brooks and he's a member of the RTM. Maybe he can help me with a problem that's going to exist on the Merritt and the 95 and our other roads. And if I can help them with that problem, I will try and do that. And I do believe a vote tonight will send a message to Hartford and have a material impact. So if we defer on this, we're saying to that person, look, don't talk to me, talk to your state representative. Not my issue. I want to help my neighbors. I believe that tolls are not the appropriate thing right now, so I'm voting against them. And hey, if you think tolls are the right thing, then you should vote for them because it will send a message to Hartford. But I believe that we should vote on the merits. I believe we should vote tonight and we should send a message to Hartford that we don't want tolls. Thank you.
Monica Prohoda to be followed by Trey Reynolds.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and fellow members of the RTM. I am Monica Prohoda, a member of the RTM from Old Greenwich. Old Greenwich RTM District 6. Lately, a line from a song from the Music Man has been on my mind, and it is, "We got trouble right here in River City." Greenwich could be River City. For a nonpartisan RTM body, there is a distinct smell of partisanship, most recently evidenced by the proliferation of no-toll signs which popped up all over Greenwich. Just an observation. Another observation. If the proponents of the SOMAR against tolls, including the Senator Logan who spoke this evening, are so concerned with the financial impact on low and middle income residents, why don't we have a SOMAR to increase the minimum wage substantially? Regarding the gas tax as a solution, gas usage will continue to decrease as more and more people buy electric and hybrid vehicles. I have a hybrid vehicle. On the matter of SOMAR against tolls, I would like to read a letter from an Old Greenwich resident, Mr. Gerald Pollock, who represents the majority opinion of the very few letters I received on this subject. I received only one letter against tolls. This is the letter from Mr. Pollock. Dear Ms. Prohoda, I write to urge you to vote against the sense of the meeting resolution opposing tolling. It's not that I look forward to paying tolls, but we are all experiencing bad road conditions and frequent traffic congestion. And without a new source of funds, these conditions cannot be improved as they need to be. The question is where these funds are to come from. Bonding has been proposed as a better solution than tolling, but our state's debt is already excessive. On a per capita basis, it is the second highest in the nation, exceeded only by Massachusetts. Moreover, bonded debt is not free. Interest must be paid, and debt paid off or rolled over at added interest expense. Then, 100% of the interest...
Oh, I forgot to say 30 seconds.
Okay. Anyway, you get the idea. The proposed tolling system would charge out-of-state traffic more than Connecticut vehicles. So, I agree with the reasons so eloquently stated by Mr. Pollock, and I will vote yes to postpone indefinitely. I hope you will join me. We have plenty of work to do right here in the town of Greenwich without micromanaging state matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Trey Reynolds to be followed by Kathy Taylor. The heavy hitters are left.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Trey Reynolds. I'm the district leader in RTC District 2. And I am against tolls for a lot of reasons, some of which have been mentioned tonight. But I have to say, Greenwich has to tell Hartford that we're against tolls. Greenwich is the biggest revenue producer for Hartford. Probably 13% of the Connecticut budget comes with about $1 billion of revenue going to Hartford. Of course, that decreases every time a millionaire moves out, which is unfortunately quite often. There's a lot of ways to raise revenues, just as there are a lot of ways to reduce spending. Our government in Connecticut is out of control. There seems to be no plan and no priorities. And consequently, there's tremendous potential for huge fraud, waste, and abuse. I urge every one of you to vote yes for the no tolls resolution. The Special Transportation Fund was fully funded until Governor Lamont made the decision to divert proceeds from the car sales taxes to the general fund. He can easily change that. This is a manufactured crisis. Had Lamont not made that decision, there would be no so-called need for tolls. How many out-of-state cars use our highways? The pro-tollers are fond of saying the number's 40%. In fact, just last Monday, at the town hall in the committee meetings, Joe McGee even went so far as to say that it could be 50% of the cars on our highways are from out of state. Really? Do you really see every other car that's with an out-of-state plate? Really? We're in Greenwich here. We're right next to New York. There's no way. I mean, how about 1 out of every 2 cars? 1 out of every car. So it's ludicrous, really. Where do they come up with these numbers? Just drive on our highways, look at the cars. I dare any one of you to tell me the figure is greater than 1 out of 10. I drive on the highways every day. I see it, and I'm around Greenwich mostly. Okay. Given Connecticut's budget record, the idea of creating a brand new toll authority bureaucracy is heinously expensive way to raise money. More government, more fraud, waste, and abuse. Think about it. The new tolling authority will be staffed with public union employees, all of whom are on our generous health care plan, our pension plan, which is, of course, largely unfunded. An entire infrastructure has to be built. It takes over 3 years. $400 million has to be paid over the coming years by future Connecticut residents, along with $550 million bailout of Hartford. The bottom line is we would be lucky to keep 50% of the top line revenues.
Thank you very much.
Once all expenses are calculated.
Kathy Taylor to be followed
vote
by
yes.
Joseph Kantorsky.
Late, retired, I bring props. They're rudimentary. I know I'm in a very sophisticated audience, so forgive me. We have hedge funders, Wall Streeters, Princeton economic alum. I come here as a citizen and, oh, sorry, I was trying to be loud enough because I want to be able to point to my sign. I'm going to lift and carry. Maybe not. Can you hear me? No. All right. Good enough. We'll get the point across. It's late. You all have been very patient. I come tonight as a Greenwich citizen and as a former White House economic advisor, and I come on a nonpartisan basis because I don't think this is a partisan issue. I think it's an economic issue and an issue of human nature. And what do I mean by that? We're all familiar with the concept A plus B plus C equals D. Very simple. We can substitute that for taxes plus schools plus safety equals suburban nirvana. It equals the suburb everybody wants to move to. It's always equal to Greenwich. This is basic economics. It is basic America. It is basic good economic policy. We know this. It's proven. You can also substitute that same equation for value for taxes, opportunity for our children for schools, and preservation, human nature, for safety. That's the human nature part of the equation. It's true for all of us. That also gets you to your ideal suburb. The challenge with this proposal for tolls is that it deals and it changes 2 of the levers of this very standard, very well-researched, very proven in our country equation. It changes taxes and it changes preservation or safety. What do I mean by that? We know that businesses will most adversely be impacted by tolls. We've seen it in other places that have done it in our country. And where will the slack then come when business revenue goes down? Increased real estate taxes. So I ask you to ask yourselves this evening 2 things very simply, because there is no more local issue than this to be discussed among ourselves. If you are okay with your real estate taxes going up,
and handing over a portion of your home equity to the state to manage, go ahead for tolls. If you are okay with Greenwich becoming more transient in nature, and I hate to invoke this, but it's unfortunately true, more suitcases ending up on the sides of our roads by people driving through, then go ahead for tolls. You may not like it, but it's
30 seconds.
true. Okay.
Stop, please.
Okay. Thank you. I respectfully listened as well. Thank you. So those are the questions we need to ask ourselves this evening. It's a very, very simple equation. I thank you for your time.
Joseph Kantorsky, to be followed by Harry Aurora. Less than the fingers on your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me? My name is Joe Kantorsky. I'm from District 4. It's better in Byram, you know. I'm here to support postponing it indefinitely. And a number of really good reasons have been brought up. But the thing that pops into my head is something my mother said to me. We all listen to our mothers, don't we? She said, Joey, take a deep breath. Figure out what is going on before you decide to solve a problem. Get as much information as you can before you say to yourself, you know, I think this is what we should do. And if she were here today, she would say, don't take something off the table that might be a solution to what it is you're trying to do. And I think that's what the SMR is doing. It's saying, no, we can't think about this solution because, well, we don't know about what the other solutions might be, but we can't think about this one. I think we do ourselves a disservice by thinking that way, and I think the town of Greenwich deserves better than that, to rush in and say, nope, we're closing that door. I thank you for your time.
Harry Aurora, to be followed by Rommel Nobe.
RTM members, I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I ask each one of you to vote against tolls and for this resolution. I give these recommendations based upon two aspects of my recent experience. I spent 6 months last year studying Connecticut transportation problem with specific focus on Fairfield congestion under Dr. Jose Ibanez at Harvard Kennedy School. Secondly, I must have discussed this issue and other transportation issues with thousands, at least 2,000 people personally over the course of 6 months last year. And I would like to give 3 reasons why we should definitely be very careful and take this opportunity to reject the tolling proposal and, in our situation, vote for the resolution. Number 1, compared to the rest of the states, we spend disproportionately higher per capita and per mile on transportation. The real challenge we face is not that we don't spend enough, we spend ineffectively. In the last 5 years, especially under the Connecticut ramp-up, Go Connecticut program, we spent $2+ billion on CapEx. A much accelerated spending, which has led to increased bonding. And what has it gotten us? Has congestion gone down? No. And as a result, and I can point out various places where ineffective spending has amounted to billions of dollars, or at least hundreds of millions of dollars. There are many examples. Think about Shoreline Express, a train system which serves only 500,000 riders a year, compared to 50 million riders, which is the MTA. It got funded billions of dollars overall, and hundreds of millions of dollars from the state budget. So the spending is ineffective and wasteful, and tolls is not going to solve that problem. What we need to do is to focus, to have the state focus on effective spending and effective capital allocation.
30
Secondly,
seconds.
Secondly, it's a regressive tax. We have heard that. And we do not want to create two classes. One class of people who use the state, who feel comfortable using 95, another class of people who want to just skirt 95 and use the side roads. That's not okay. And I do think it's our responsibility as a town. This is an issue where there is huge consensus across party lines. There's a lot of consensus when you actually call people, when you speak to people.
Thank you very much.
And so I do ask you to vote for the resolution. Thank you.
Rommel Nobe to be followed by Ed Dodakis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, RTM members. My name is Rommel Nobe. I'm a member of District 8, and I think that Ms. Krasner and Ms. Hamry nailed the issue on the head. This SOMR is inappropriate and misdirected. This is not a municipal issue. This is a state issue, and it is a slippery slope from here to go talk about gun control or SCOTUS appointments or Trump or any other non-municipal issue. This is an inappropriate issue for the RTM to be bringing up. There have been many people up over here who've been misstating facts about what tolls are. And I think one of my fellow Tigers indicated that tolls are user fees, not taxes. Tolls are the most efficient way to assemble revenue and funding for repairing our infrastructure. Secondly, the tolls are going to go into a transportation lockbox that was established a couple years ago. And cannot be rated as it was 36 years ago and 40 years ago and 20 years ago. Okay? The people who are opposing tolls are suggesting that maybe I should be getting my water for free, or I should be riding Metro North for free. I don't understand the logic behind saying that I can use a public good without paying for it. Thank you very much. The rest of my points have been made already.
Ed Dodakis to be followed by Rob Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM. I'm delighted to stand here tonight in full agreement with my good friends Frank Farraker and John Blankley. There is no more a bipartisan issue than this toll issue. And when they spoke, they were exactly right. And like Mrs. Krasner, I too am serving my 41st year on the RTM. Now, there's a big difference between Lucy and I. I've aged terribly over that 40 years, and she looks exactly the same. Now, the problem in Connecticut is not that we tax or toll too little. The problem in Connecticut is that we spend too much. And these tolls and the other proposals to tax show no signs of spending slowing down. This is a critical issue for our neighbors. And I know that because I've gotten phone calls and I've gotten emails and I've been stopped in the grocery store. People in our neighbors, in my district, and my neighbors are very upset about this. And it's not just the cost, it's the enormous increase in traffic that they fear, the environmental impact that all the pollution and all the idling cars will cause because they will avoid the tolls. I think it's important to remember what a sense of the meeting resolution is. It is a sense of the meeting. It's what do we think? It's not an in-depth analysis of 40 different toll proposals and an analysis of the fiscal well-being of Connecticut, which we know is in terrible shape. It's to give people a sense of what we are thinking. It is not binding. It never has been. There are many sense of the meeting resolutions that we voted for that Thank God we're not binding. So, right? So I think it's important to remember that. And if your sense is to be against tolls, as my sense is, I would vote against postponement, and I would vote in favor of this sense of the meeting resolution. Thank you.
You know, when I saw John Blankley's name on the sign-up list and he checked he was in favor of no tolls, I thought he was trying to fool me. All right. Rob Blanchard from the Office of the Governor. Is Rob Blanchard here? No? And no? Fred Camillo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. I know it's a late night here, so out of respect for my friends on both sides of the issue, I'll try to wrap a 60-minute argument into about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I am Fred Camillo, a former RTM member from District 12 and current state representative for the 151st District, here tonight in strong support of the sense of the meeting resolution. While it is non-binding, it is important for a town that's as significant as Greenwich, Connecticut, to send a message to the Connecticut General Assembly. I was here in 1983 when the bridge fell, and people like our own beloved Michael Morano worked with several people, including Governor Bill O'Neill, to set up something called the Special Transportation Fund, which has been raided year after year after year. And with all due respect to one of the former speakers just a few minutes ago, it's still being raided. In fact, most of us voted for a lockbox in the Special Transportation Fund last November. That doesn't go into effect till July 1st. Governor Lamont is raiding it right now in his budget. So how are we going to trust future legislatures and governors with revenue from tolling? And what hasn't been raided has been grossly mismanaged. I'll give you two quick stats. We spend $100,000 per mile on administrative costs for transportation. The national average is $9,600. That's 9.5 times the national average. We spent $700 million on the New Britain Busway for 9.1 miles of road, and they tore up light rail to do it. That is what we want to trust. The money is there, my friends. The money is there. We could also keep the way stations open. When I first was elected, the state troopers were in charge of it. I ask everybody, when you go by exit 2, how often do you see it open? Never. Hardly ever. The scale was broke 4 or 5 years ago. It took 5.5 months to fix. It's time to put the state troopers back there and keep it open. The money is there. The money is there. With all due respect to my friends on the other side, they say it's a user fee. It's not a tax. A user fee is your golf pass when you go up to the Griff. When you go up to the Griff, a user fee is a beach card. This is a tax because we have no choice but to use that. So please, I'll wrap it up right now. Thank you for listening. Good luck on the rest of the debate, but please send a strong message to the General Assembly that we cannot afford another mistake like tolls. Thank you so much.
All right, I understand Mr. Blanchard is here. Rob Blanchard from the Governor's Office. This is our last speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, members of the Greenwich RTM. I will try to be brief here as to get this over with. I'm from the Governor's Office, but I'm also a member of the City Council in Middletown, where Thursday night we also will be debating the exact resolution that is before you tonight. And I can assure you that unlike your member, RTM, which is nonpartisan and gets along well, this issue has brought unnecessary partisanship and divide on our City Council, which is only 12 members at a time that we don't need it, a month before we debate our budget. Things like education, turf fields are much more important, and where we incentivize businesses to come to Middletown is what we need to be debating, not this. First and foremost, borrowed money is not free. We're all in favor of overhauling and improving our infrastructure. It's not a question of whether or not to do it. The debate is how we do it and how we fund it. By 2030, it's estimated that the borrowing will cost Connecticut taxpayers an additional $600 million per year, which is the exact amount that the governor is hoping to cut out of our borrowing through a debt diet. That is borrowing plus interest. That will cost us an additional 15%, paid for 100% by everyone in this room. Everyone in this room will pay the cost. Greenwich, there is no way you're getting to Boston or New York without passing through Greenwich. Up to 40% can be funded by out-of-towners. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and I know the cost of getting home to the GW, getting to Pennsylvania through New Jersey. We've had it here in Connecticut before, and we are subsidizing out-of-staters. We pay to use their roads. Nobody says I'm not going to go to New York because of the tolls. No one says I'm not going to go to Boston because of the tolls. We are paying it when you drive to New York. You're paying it one way or another when people are coming in here. It's costing more time in our cars, up to 41 hours, it said, people spend in their cars. This is one of the most congested areas in the country. That can equate to $1,588 per person in productivity. Whether it's, an extra 15 minutes you've got to put in your mind going to a doctor's appointment or another half hour going to work, the fact that we've got to account for traffic is insane. You always say to yourself, it's going to cost me how much more? And everyone says people are leaving Connecticut. Then why are the roads always full and congested?
30 seconds.
So I urge you to stick to local issues. You can debate how we fund this. The bill is not yet finalized. This is a discussion. It's a concept. We're ironing out the details, ironing out the discounts, ironing out where things could be, the number of gantries. But we invite you to join the discussion and not just take this solution or idea off the table. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to congratulate all of our speakers. We had almost 50 people in an hour and a half, so thank you very much for making your points quickly. All right, I'm going to call for the vote. This is, I'd ask the district chairs to mark your voting cards. Item number 2, motion to postpone indefinitely. Let me explain. If you are in favor of killing item 2 right now, you should vote yes on the motion to postpone indefinitely. If you want to take item 2 up on its merits, you vote no on this motion. Is everyone clear? Okay. If you want to kill item 2, you vote yes on the vote that is coming around. If you want to take up item 2 and vote on the merits, you should vote no on this motion to postpone indefinitely. We will need to await the result of this vote. So I ask the district chairs to please expedite polling your districts. And if you have voted, now why don't we, you can stand up and stretch. All right, I do have the result of the vote on item number 3. That was the tax credit for seniors. Have not announced that yet. Those in favor, 192. Opposed, 0. Abstaining, 0. Item 3 has carried. All right, we have the result of the vote on the motion to postpone item 2 indefinitely. Those in favor, 101. Opposed, 89. Abstaining, 1. The motion has carried. Item 2 has now been disposed of. There being no further business to come before the meeting, this meeting stands adjourned upon unanimous consent. Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.